some German businessman would give the Nazis 5,000, the equivalent of 5,000 pounds of money. The Nazis would send tractors and whatever to Palestine. The Zionists would sell the tractors in Palestine, in Egypt, wherever. And when the German Jew arrived in Palestine, the Zionists would give him not 5,000, 4,000. And he goes and visits a kibbutz. And then the British realize he's there, and they realize this guy, he says he's a journalist, this is bullshit. I mean, he's some kind of government agent. So they kicked him out, and Eichmann and Weidenholz met in Cairo. And again, we have the file from the Nazis, what they talked about. Okay. Now, as I said, I was in Palestine, in Israel, in 1983. When I was there, I met a Zionist historian named Yoav Gelman. And Gelman says, he's a historian. He's a Zionist, I'm anti-Zionist, but he's a serious historian.
Confront the oppression of Palestinians. I spend a lot of time in Palestine. If you load your truck full of produce, it doesn't get through the checkpoint. It sits there until it rots. If you have, I spoke with a factory owner that had a knitting factory, used to export all over the world, top of the line sweaters, and he can't get the goods out.
I think in England, for instance, some of the unions in supermarkets refuse to handle Israeli goods. That kind of a boycott. And by the way, the most recognized powerful workers' action that I mentioned earlier was the boycott, workers' boycott, the strike against the ship that came in from South Africa. That was in 1984. And I forgot to give kudos to the man in the Longshore Union who made that resolution, Howard Taylor. 1990, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison, he did a world tour. He came here to Oakland, and he said it was that action by the Longshore Union that ignited the spark of the anti-apartheid movement. So, yeah, workers' actions can be much more powerful than individual consumer boycotts.
Yeah, but you know what? While I agree with Jack, they're more powerful. We gotta learn not to be dogmatic in the way we interpret things. Now, we certainly advocated for workers' action in solidarity with South Africa. And it happened. And I can't tell you, of course we were overjoyed by that. But listen, let me tell you, don't kill the good with the perfect. Here's what's going on. I, for years, argued, that disinvestment shit was a diversion. Well, I was called upon to actually study it. So I went back and I actually started studying the figures, and here's what I found out. In fact, the South African government was uptight about divestment. They even went so far as to change their currency so that they could try to avoid some of the effects of divestment. No, divestment did not bring down the South African government. It was a confluence of events. The defeat at Quino Valley in Angola, probably the most important. The growing workers' movement within South Africa. Solidarity movements outside of the country. So it was not one thing. But divestment did not make the government of South Africa very happy. And I would bet that BDS also doesn't make the government of Israel very happy. And more importantly, we have a responsibility to support all those who are attacked for advancing it. We should defend their free speech rights as a beginning.
On the state level in California, that's going through the California Assembly right now, Bill 2844 is going to mete out some sort of punishment for an individual or a group who has anything to do with involvement with BDS. On another level, and it's on the federal level, Ms. Pelosi's level, but I don't have too many details on it. They're working on a bill to come through both houses of Congress that will make it illegal to compare anything of the anything of the Israeli government with Nazism or with a German fascism. Both these bills totally ignore that there is a First Amendment. Well, everybody wants to ignore that there's a First Amendment. Does Mr. Brenner or anybody on the panel?
You notice the Democratic debates between Clinton and Sanders never got in, except for one point, into Israel-Palestine.
Yeah.
Because the Democratic Party base no longer supports Israel in the way it once did. So both of them obviously did not want the subject to come up. And it was an embarrassing moment back in 2012 we won't go into, but clearly, what's her name? Hillary Clinton was writing articles in the Jewish press expressing what she was going to do for Israel when she got elected, but didn't say a word about it to the national audiences, nor was she asked in any of the debates about it, because there's a whole collusion among the media and the Democrats to keep this issue off the agenda. There's no other reason to explain it, given the history of the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's support for Israel.
Is there any other comment on what's going through the federal level?
Okay, well, I just want to talk a little bit about the Zionist lobby. Many of you know of an outfit called Jewish Telegraphication. It's the Zionist equivalent of the Associated Press. The head of the Washington Bureau of the Jewish Telegraphication made an estimate that between 1/3 and 2/3 of the Democratic Party campaign contributions come from Jews. Now, I use the 1/3 as my, I'm playing it cautious, okay. And as far as the Republicans are concerned, the biggest campaign contributor in American history is Sheldon Adelson, who contributed $100 million to the Republicans in 2012, and he's promising to contribute another $100 million to Trump's campaign. All right? So, as far now, the New York Times, terrible paper that it is, nevertheless, and never stops talking today about the domination of the Catholics of our election campaign. $100 million, one guy. Anybody that asks for it, if you write me, if you email me, I'll send you the Jewish Telegraph agency about the Democrats, 1/3 of their campaign contributions coming from Jews. So it's not a quote from me, it's a quote from a thoroughly reputable Zionist source.